Greg, I gotta, good
Greg is
morning, good
definitely
morning. Welcome to the Image Profile Report. I'm your host, Herb Glenn. We're here today to continue our dialogue of being able to develop a way in which we can raise awareness about issues that are important for our community. Today we have Ms. Marianne Wiktorowicz, and we're going to get into knowing who Miss Wiktorowicz is. Many of you may have seen her during the course of your daily activities going to and fro, especially around the Penn Station area with none other than our other close ally, Dr. Street Doctor. The Street Doctor is someone who has given me an opportunity to meet Marianne Wiktorowicz, and we are very happy to have her on air with us today. Of course, we have Mr. Thomas Ellis, the good Reverend, who has inspired us on many occasions and who is really, I guess, my running buddy, right? What do they call it? What do they call it?
the road dog.
Man.
Yeah, road dog. Yeah.
Road dog. Look, Greg, you got to. Greg, you a young person. You got to get up time. Road dog.
I'm sorry. I'm the young buck. I'm always the young buck on the channel.
Right?
I'm the young buck.
He
I'll
already
take the
coined
position.
the name for you, the young buck.
I'll take the position. I'll take the position.
young buck.
I'm honored to be the young buck on the channel.
Buck.
Absolutely.
Hey, and yes, indeed, we have Gregory Glenn, the young buck, and my firstborn son.
That's right. That's right.
Some of the things that have been going on in our area, and I think abroad nationally, has been an area that Marianne Wiktorowicz has been actively involved with, and that's the homeless situation that we have in the city of Newark particularly, but across the country. There have been many situations that have really emulated that there's still not enough done. COVID-19 did raise awareness, but it seems as if it does not center on some of the modalities that have been a current problem prior to the COVID-19 situation. We see in New York, they're going through a process of cleaning the train systems, for instance, and in most cases, that attitude has caused a relocation of individuals in the homeless subways and in the homeless in the areas where homeless people frequent. And I believe that we still have the same problem downtown Newark. But before we get deep into this conversation, I like Miss Wiktorowicz, Marianne, if you don't mind if I call you by your first name, to give us a little bit of a background of what you have amassed in the time that you have spent with the passion of wanting to do for others, and how have you been able to keep it where it can be helpful for others?
Well, I feel like what I've been doing is just really a drop in the bucket, and there's a lot of other people who are actively engaged with helping the homeless. So I just try to do my little part. And actually, since my daughter was maybe 8 or 9, her dad and I used to, help serve in various places, during holidays and what. We always taught her to try to give back. But so it really started as a family thing. And then about 4 years ago, I met Mr. Best, the street doctor, and I was wanting to get involved with stuff he was doing. So we would try to go down to Penn Station and hand out food and clothes to the folks who were homeless. Recently, I haven't been as active, but people have donated food that I've been able to cook, and we've brought down meals to the folks there. And there's still a large amount of homeless folks who either are unwilling to or haven't found the space to get into shelters, because the shelters are restrictive in terms of sometimes their rules and regulations, and some folks have issues like maybe alcoholism or drug addiction. That's some, but some are just haven't been able to have the money to pay to find an apartment, and the rents are going sky high. So there's still a large community of homeless folks who are just fending for themselves and trying to get together as almost like a community. Sometimes there's a group that we went and fed last week that wasn't that had kind of disappeared from the week before. There was a large community under the overpass, and they had been kind of relocated. So they're kind of, as you said, they're trying to clean up the area so people look at homeless folks at like they're bums or whatever, and they're people with real stories. And some of them were successful folks who were working and just fell upon bad times, and they weren't able to afford to stay in their homes, and now we're just trying to do the best they can. So they're human beings, and we need to look out for them, and we need to do more to find shelter, a permanent shelter for folks like this. So
You've been looking after homeless people for quite a while, and the passion that you have for it doesn't come easy. Everyone has reservations, especially when it comes to people that are in that situation. And many of us still don't know the true history. We know that there's been millions of dollars that have been brought into government to oversee opportunities to care for individuals like that. But yet we continuously, and even in this situation of health crises, we still see people who apparently appear as if they have no one giving them attention but a few, valued soldiers like yourself. Why do you think that's so?
I don't know. I think maybe it's a prejudice that folks have, that they think that folks on the street are all either possibly going to attack them or, you know, be sick or ill. I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. I've just always felt like there but for fortune go you or I. It's you know, 2 paychecks away from being homeless is the status of a lot of us. You know, if we don't have that coming in, we could be there just as easily as some of the folks that are there. So um, the shelters um, are often have very little privacy, and there's a lot of rules, like you have to be in a certain time, and if you don't get in by a certain time, you get kicked out. So that hasn't been the answer, and I think we really need to focus on trying to find a progressive system where we can get folks into their own apartments, where they can lock the door behind them, but then have services, maybe counseling and job training and just things like that. There are people who may have lost their jobs and they just need to be retrained, and maybe some of them have some emotional issues and they're in need of counseling. So we need to set up a system where we can address some of those needs but give the folks who are homeless some security, because a lot of the complaints that we hear are that people steal from them. You know, they may go to a shelter, but then they find that any little valuable that they do have has been stolen. So they don't feel safe and secure in a lot of the shelters. So we need to just do better and go one step forward, and create a system where we do a progressive uh, attention to the needs. So it's not just food and clothing, but it's also counseling services, job training, those kinds of things. And if we could set that up where people can have their own apartments, maybe not have to pay rent for a couple of months until they get on their feet, and in the meantime provide the services they need to become whole again. That's the kind of system that we need to look to.
Thomas?
Yeah, Herb, and thank you, Mary Ann. Let me say this briefly. So people who know me personally, I mean, that truly know me as family and maybe some close friends, they know that one of my best kept secrets is that I've been an advocate for homeless people since 1983. Now, in 1983, I was working at the Apollo Theater as a stage technician and so forth and so on for Percy Sutton. But in 1983 in New York, homeless people were sleeping all on the streets and all on the trains everywhere. So I quit working at the Apollo Theater, went to Washington, D.C., and became homeless. Went there with no job, no place to stay. The first shelter I stayed in was 6 and I Street, if anybody know Washington. It was called the Blair School. I went there to understand the plight of homelessness, because back in the 80s, early 80s and late 70s, it was like almost 100,000 people homeless in New York City. I stayed in shelters to understand the plight of homelessness. I went to Atlanta in 1993, homeless, to see the Olympics. I had no job, no relatives, no place to stay. A person coming from Harlem going down to Atlanta, homeless. So I did a very in-depth research study on homelessness. And so there's a lot of variables on why people are homeless. The first shelter I stayed in on 6 and I Street, and that's in Washington, D.C., there was people sleeping next to me on the cot who worked on Capitol Hill. So to dispel the myth that people thought all the homeless people were alcoholics, they were drug addicts, they didn't want to pay rent, all of that, this is back in 83. Now today, move it forward. With this COVID situation, we see many people living like they're homeless. They necessarily may not be homeless, but the conditions and the effect of this have them now standing online, waiting for food, taking their family, looking for a little place to stay. So homelessness, I'm glad Ms. Marianne is on this. Homelessness have really affected millions of people, but not a lot of people want to get in and work with the homeless people. Not a lot. And lastly, when I was living in Washington, D.C., and I was living in shelters, I stayed in transitional homes, then I also wound up working for homeless organizations. So 2nd and P Street was a transitional home in Washington, D.C., 2nd and P Street. But 2nd and D Street was the largest homeless shelter in the country back then. And a young man, his name was Mitch Snyder. Mitch Snyder used to be a 6-figure lawyer back then. He went to Washington, opened up this shelter, helped everybody in DC who was homeless, but then he committed suicide and hung himself in that shelter.
Wow. You know, it's amazing. I grew up in the Bronx, where I think a lot of the energy started when the Ministers Clergy Alliance there, the Bronx Shepherds, were looking for a solution to homelessness, and the shelters were developed. And in many cases, the real problem that had evolved was the maintenance and upkeep of the shelters. And as Marianne just shared with us, if you go and you survey some of the individuals who are out and not in sheltered areas of homelessness, they're not there because they feel that security is really bad, or that it's not, being taken care of properly when it comes to health and wellness. It's interesting that you would look at a number of recommendations, Marianne, and the theory is that those opportunities already exist. Have there been any agencies that you have had contact with that did not fulfill those obligations based upon the need of the individuals that you may be trying to help?
I am not privy to all of the folks that are working. I know that there's an organization called Bridges. I know somebody who works there, and they've been able to house about 100 homeless folks in some of the hotels that are vacant, at least during this COVID um, epidemic. So they are in individual rooms. So I think that's probably a good place to be. And I know there's the Newark Coalition for the Homeless who've been working tirelessly to help. But I know there's the shelter on Sussex Avenue. But I know one time when we visited there, they were severely understaffed. But other than that, I'm not as familiar with some of the actual shelters and how they're operating and what they're providing. So I know there's some meals provided at some of the shelters, but and clothes, but I don't know how people who are there are reacting to the situation.
I know the mayor had created a coalition of individuals. They even had uh, some type of identifying garments that they were wearing with clipboards indicating that they were trying to get information. And obviously some of the individuals, you know, the big brother attitude, didn't want to give up personal information that was necessary to try to help them. But in your work now, you have been able to get support in a number of different ways in order to be able to fulfill your interest of helping these individuals. Can you share with us exactly how have you been going about doing that, and what may be some areas that you still need?
All right. Well, like I said, I'm really a drop in the bucket compared to what some people are doing, but I I believe in networking. So a lot of people, I guess, heard what we were trying to do, what Street Doctor and I were trying to do, and there are other people involved as well. But some folks donated food that needed to be cooked. I needed containers. I put out a call for containers. We have what's called a swap site in my area, so people were able to donate um, containers for me to put the food into after it was cooked. I also put out a call for toiletries and stuff. So I put that out on Facebook, and lots of people sent me either some funds, or somebody sent me a bunch of washcloths and soaps and socks and all various kinds of things. And we made up bags, and some of them went to, um, so each little bag has like soap, a washcloth, shampoo, socks, deodorant, those kinds of things. And those went to, some of those went to Bridges, some of those get handed out to Penn Station, so that folks have a way to at least wash up a little bit. So it's basically just word of mouth, Facebook, networking, and as people give me donations, then I put them out to where the need is as best as I am able to.
So in essence, you're not getting any government assistance. You don't have any grants to be able to help develop ways in which you can be able to do your outreach. You need some gas money every now and then, right?
Yeah, yeah, and my thought was to try to set up a nonprofit organization. I haven't gotten to do that yet. That's my own fault. But my daughter passed away 7 years ago. She was 30, and she and her dad were the main reasons I think I got involved in all of this. And so to carry on some of their um, desires and their hopes, I wanted to, get a foundation together to meet some of the needs. And so I'm hoping that I'll be able to do that. And it would be great to have somebody who's done this nonprofit stuff before to help me out on that. But I do have a book that I'm following, and some other folks that can help with that.
Well, you come to the right place. Right now, what we can offer to help fill the gap in terms of you being able to get opportunities through resources using a nonprofit. We can become a nonprofit entity that can become the bridge to help support your effort, and we can help you build whatever the resources that you need to get your own independence. So we're going to stay in touch with you and see what we can do to help manifest that reality as quickly as possible. There is a period of time, and there are different areas that you would have to relate to in order to be able to overcome those obstacles. But We Care Partners is here for that purpose, and we'll be more than happy to help you overcome that obstacle.
Okay, that'd be wonderful.
Okay. Great, great, great. Minister Ellis, today is the day that the Lord has made. What's on your agenda?
Well, look like today is the day Greg is down there at the beach already.
Leave him alone, will you? You started picking on him early today.
Because I see that backdrop, Doc. I'm jealous. I want to know how Greg had the conference room last week. Now he's sitting there living the life. Greg, that's awesome. That's awesome. No, that is awesome. Be creative. And here's the point. In the time of people using Zoom, and Herb, you and I spoke about this before we came on. In the time of people using Zoom, backdrops and all of that is very important. And so that's a nice backdrop. It's very calming, you know, it's relaxing looking. And so that's all I'm saying. So
thank you.
Update. So we know that the governor, Phil Murphy, is saying that the beaches or the shore can be open by the Memorial Day, the holiday. And that may be good for some. And people, today it's going to be 85 degrees. People are going to be out all over. I'm just kind of upset or sad because if you can open the beaches, then you should be able to play baseball. And you know, I'm a baseball coach. I love baseball. All my young players, my kids, they are missing the park. And so my thinking on this is, how are you going to open up the beaches and let people just walk around, even with masks on or whatever, but then don't let the kids who need recreation right now, they've been locked up in houses and apartments and can't get out and stretch, not let them have a chance to do what they want to do. So I'm kind of upset on one front. You're going to open the beaches, but you're not going to let people go to the park and do whatever. Now, guarantee you, there's going to be some people on the beaches with volleyballs, because what do you take to the beach? A volleyball, a bucket to empty to get sand. So it's going to be a lot of interacting going on. But the ones who are looking to be happy out of this is the business owners down there. That's Greg's piece. The business owners are hoping that the weather is like today, next week, and hundreds of thousands of people flock down there. Now, here's my point. So, is it about saving lives and people being safe and sheltering in, or is it about making money? Because it's going to be a lot of money made down there at the shore, because people are going to definitely go down there. But in the end, we should be able to let the kids and everybody else go to the park and do whatever if you're going to open up the beach.
I hear you. And you know, my wife was asking me that I think that we were going to be able to play tennis. And I told her all the parks are still locked. The kids can't even play in the playground. You know, they're just letting you walk through the park. And I'm sure that this is just the method in which they won't want to do everything all at once. Obviously, they don't want to have a bunch of crowds around. And I was watching an exhibition game, I believe, where they were actually social distancing. Instead of doing high fives, they were mimicking high fives to one another, and you know, standing like 6 feet apart. You know, because like, as you know, in baseball and in football and a number of the other sports, except tennis, there are large groups of individuals that congregate because of the type of positioning that they play basketball and hockey and others. And there's got to be some kind of new standard created in order for it to work well, if we have to continue to do social distancing before they can actually get some kind of a remedy for this virus, it's like horrendous. We're hoping that in the next couple of days that they would release some of those restrictions and allow at least many of us to go out and perform those those physical activities that we really enjoy the most. I'm sure eventually it's going to happen. But it's interesting that, at this point, and really to transcend a little bit of this conversation over to you, Greg, is that right now we're hearing from each one of the municipalities, from the governor to the city, and around the world, around the country at least, that they're talking about furloughing and layoffs. And,
Right.
when you talk about furloughing, layoffs, and you already got a population that's already homeless without any kind of opportunity for redemption. And then you have a situation where unemployment is like just so astronomical now. It's mind boggling to even tell you what kind of a number that it is and what it will look like in the next couple of months, especially during the
Correct.
seasons that generally most like teachers would go and get unemployment. Um, I'm even at the beck and uh, call in a relationship. I'm 63 years old. Uh, I don't get the greatest evaluations. I am going to
Wow.
be deemed an undesirable, probably the first
Correct.
one that they're going to target to get
Hey,
rid of. What do
which is
I do?
which is honestly across the board. I mean, aside from the furlough, like I was looking at it, and first of all, and New Jersey already has a very antiquated system. It's very old. A lot of people, even applying months ago, still have not received their unemployment. So to be able to furlough a large amount of people, the unemployment is going to be ridiculous. I mean, I can see it now, and it does now start the conversation of, especially those that are older, how are you going to be able to live? How are you going to survive? And a lot of people are talking about early retirement, taking out Social Security early. And the crucial thing is that you really have to sit down and understand how retirement planning and retirement works, because there's a lot of holes that people are not aware of. One of the biggest things is if people have what's called the your savings account, which is like the 401k, the 403b. Well, do you have enough money to be able to last you for an entire retirement period? Especially with the fact that people are living past 20 years, 30 years, do you have enough money to deal with living that long? When we go into Social Security planning, when we actually take out Social Security early, you're decreasing your your Social Security benefit by 30%, some even 40% based off of where your age at. So can you take that 30% cut for the rest of your life, especially with the fact that the cost of living is going up, and realize with everything that is going on, you're going to see a interesting economic shift where you might see prices going up, you may see taxation going up. So if you're going to be retiring and a lot of your retirement are in tax vehicles, you have to now worry about the fact that the majority of your retirement funds may be taxed.
Wow.
So so that's the reason why right now, like a lot of
So the little
people,
bit of money you're going to be getting is going to be even a little lower.
and 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 the
Lower.
sad exactly. And then not only that, but a lot of people don't know that even with Social Security, if all of your things are in taxable, like if you're getting pensions, 401k, they're all taxable vehicles. As a result, it can actually have your Social Security taxed 85%. Where if you structure it correctly, it can be taxed only 50%.
Are there any remedies?
Planning and planning early.
So
It's
let me just cut you here. When you're saying plan, like, we know that there are going to be furloughs. We know that there are going to be layoffs. We better start getting ready now and not continuing to feel that, oh, it's going to bypass us, because it's going to get to us eventually.
It's going to, and one of the things that I found personally with the COVID-19, and from a health standpoint, this is a horrible pandemic. But what it has done is it's exposed America of what the true financial nature of America is. the fact that we don't have savings, the fact that our retirement plannings are not up to par, the fact that we have lack of proper protection. Protection for myself is very key because of the fact that you're having people pass away and they have no money to bury their loved ones. So we're seeing that in an individual's person's financial situation, there's so many holes and cracks that it's almost hard to be able to put it up. Not only that, but with the furlough situation, we're understanding the value of having multiple streams of income. I've always been a big advocate of multiple streams of income because what happens if something like this happens where your job says, hey, look, I don't want you anymore because of the fact that you're too costly. Executive positions, let's think about this for a moment. If they're making 75, 85, 95, 100, 200,000, yes, you're adding value, but you're also a liability to the company. So if a young person that's willing to do the same amount of work for half the pay comes in, who do you think they're going to let off first? So if you don't plan correctly, if you don't have what I call that plan B or something to undergird you, then your biggest liability is the fact that you're working. Because as we're seeing now, even though government jobs has been the safe haven, oh, as long as I have a government job, I'm fine. Well, we're seeing right now their financial liabilities, and that's what's going on. The state is trying to manage their cash flow, just like what each individual person needs to do, manage their flat cash flow, figure out where holes are being spilled out, and how can I cover them so that way I can live afloat.
There's always this conversation about Obamacare and Trump care and care, and there's no care. But you know, like how do we manifest it if in the event that you are cut short? How do you maintain your same disciplines? I mean, you know, we're having, as Marianne was saying, individuals who have good conscience, who are great people, and they are unable to afford the benefits of being able to get the kind of services that they need. Many of the people that I believe who had passed on didn't know that they were sick. They didn't know they were sick,
Yes.
as sick as they were, because you know it really came down to people who had, you know, blood pressure problems and misdiagnosing, and people who you know, weren't actually taking care of themselves properly or not being able to because they couldn't afford to. You know, you hear about people, you know, Minister Ellis, people who are dying. I mean, excuse me, people who and Marianne, are you able to talk to individuals that have actually shared with you that they've eaten uncommon food like cat food and things like that in order to make ends meet?
No, no,
Mm,
I haven't had any of those conversations.
mm.
I've heard of it happening.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I have too, where people have used alternate methods of being able to survive simply because they had to make sure that their medications were paid for and the expenses that they have to deal with in terms of keeping their housing or lights on. And eventually, you know, mentally, you get overwhelmed and you want to bail out and you have nowhere to go. And you know, it's amazing to be able to identify with the situation that's happening now. But COVID certainly is one of the biggest concerns that all of us are recognizing. We had a
Yes.
conversation. Yeah, what are you saying, Greg?
No, I was just agreeing with you. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Minister Ellis, have you gotten an update in terms of what the sites are in relationship in Newark and in relationship
Okay,
to
yeah.
where they are?
Okay, so yes, they have, of course, they just opened up the site at the Springfield Avenue movie theater, Cityplex, that opened up Wednesday. And that's a walk up and that's a drive up. You don't need insurance, but you must be a Newark resident. You must have a phone number and you know, and you just must be a resident, have a phone number, and make sure that they can contact you. And you don't need insurance. That's come on up there. They're doing that there. Another site is Branchbrook Park. They're doing testing over there in Branchbrook Park for people who want to get tested. And 155 Mount Prospect Avenue is another testing site that they're doing. There you don't need insurance neither or appointment. And then of course Weekway Park is still doing testing. So it just goes to show you how serious this COVID-19 coronavirus is, because it has affected the community in a huge way. And the ways that it has affected the community is, and we discussed some of it, homelessness, unemployment, people passing away, businesses closing. That some business owners will never open again. Now this all happened in like a 2-month span. You see people standing online waiting to get food. I've written over 6 news articles on Corona and how it's affecting people. So
and that's with the Local Talk blog, right?
No, Local Talk newspaper. You go to localtalkweekly.com, have a day-by-day newspaper. So now they up there like with the daily news. You can get them day by day now. But the point is, we all see every day and hear every day how this coronavirus is affecting people all over. But I'm going to stick with Newark. The numbers are going to increase once you do more testing. That's understandable. But we do not need people who test positive and know it going out there and acting like they don't have the virus. That's the issue. So if you test positive and you know it because they done contacted you or you done went and got the test, you were supposed to stay in the house 14 days, quarantine. But now staying in the house don't mean having all your children come in the room, jumping on your bed, have your cousin come by, bringing you a Heineken.
All right, mind your business, mind your business.
I mean, we're just saying, just saying.
But that's how it spreads. That's why I'm saying, to tell people it's okay to go to the beach, but don't tell them they can go to the park and do outside activity, is kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, again, go ahead, Craig.
I'm about to say I have to agree, because knowledge is power. So if a person knows that they have COVID, we can stop the spread. So it's important that everybody has these free types of testings to be able to really identify and just try to rectify the situation. I'm not, I feel that, like you said, if we're going to open up beaches, we should be able to open up parks, but we still have to have those measures in place to make sure that people are aware and know, so that way they can get correction. It's just like somebody that has a flu or a cold or anything like that. You need to know what you have, so that way you can get diagnosed, so that way you can be treated, so that way you can stop the spread of these various things. So that information, it's needed. It's very much needed.
Well, the other insidious thing about COVID is that you can be asymptomatic and still be positive. My daughter's church, she went to Enon Church in Philly. The pastor there hired the Black Doctors Consortium to test the congregants. He himself had no symptoms, and he wanted to be a model for his congregation. He got tested, and he was positive with no symptoms. So you can be a carrier and still pass this on. That's why widespread testing is so needed, because you don't know if you have it or not. You may have been exposed and don't know it, and you can be a carrier. The other insidious thing about this is that being in lockdown, there's been an increase in sexual domestic violence, and there's been an increase in child abuse. I know somebody who works at a hospital down in South Jersey, and they had 4 children die of child abuse. So being in lockdown has multiplied many problems. So domestic violence, child abuse are some of those, and so the mental health piece of this is also important. But until we do really widespread testing, we're not going to really put a lid on this.
Now, has there been any effort that you've been a part of where you've been helping to direct individuals for testing?
Well, no, only the sites that, Reverend Ellis mentioned. I'm glad that there are new sites opening up. I myself went to Weekway Park to get tested. I actually went through this in March. the end of March, April, I tested positive and I was really sick for a while. So I came through it, thank God, and have underlying conditions myself. But that's what's so crazy. I have the age and the underlying conditions that would have made me more vulnerable, and somehow I just got through it. And other people, some in their 40s, 50s, with no underlying illnesses, are dying. So this virus is so insidious, and now we're seeing it's affecting children. There's this inflammatory diseases. Uh, it looks like Kawasaki's disease. It can affect the heart of children, and this is happening like 2 weeks or so after they've been sick with the virus. They're coming down with this really serious inflammatory disease, and it's killing some of the children. I think 3 in New York died just recently. So it's not just adults. Now, when this first happened, they said, oh, it's going to be more likely to have seniors be victims of this, but now we're seeing it's all over. The whole population is at risk. So until we really do testing almost 100%, we're not going to be able to track and control this virus.
Yeah, and the horror of it is that even though we're focusing so much on this virus, healthcare is still poor. It's still awful in relationship to people who have regular problems, and now we're suppressing them for the priority of COVID, but there are people that are still getting sick from issues that have nothing to do with COVID that are compacted because of COVID, and it creates a dire need for attention. The weather's starting to get hot again. And as the weather gets hot, people begin to lose, their ability to be resistant. It's going to be, it's just going to be very tragic of what's going to happen if we don't have more people like yourself, Marianne, who has made an effort. And certainly we're very happy that we can now stand, as a supporter of your efforts in our relationship of wanting to continue to do outreach and having the credential to do it. You have a lot of nonprofit organizations that don't have credential to be able to accept funding or even know how to transition funding to other individuals. And that's one of the reasons why I'm empowered to have so intelligent a son. You amaze me sometimes when I hear you talk. It reminds me of a guy that's a little older now.
I wonder who that is. Honestly, and every time I'm on the show, I have to give credit to my father because he really did instill the art of not just learning, but going out there and getting the information to be able to share with others. And that's the reason why for myself, I've been passionate about financial literacy, financial education, because it's not being taught in our community. The things that I've learned over the years, there a lot of wealthy individuals are leveraging it, but we're not knowledgeable of it. So I wanted to be able to give back, and that's the heart that my father, having these digital platforms to be able to give people like Marianne, like Minister Ellis, to be able to really share with the community what's going on, because I always go with the scripture. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. So if you don't know, then how are you going to be able to correct yourself and really give yourself the advantages that most people have?
Now, Greg, I have a question for you.
I may have an answer.
Good. The House today is supposed to vote on more stimulus money. I'm guessing the Democrats want to give more money. Trump gave 1,200, and the Democrats want to give 12 million. What are we hearing on that? What, like for young people, because this affects a lot of young people too.
It
Young
does,
people
yes.
work. Young people file taxes, and some young people are out of work and they're depending, and some have gotten their 1,200 already. We need more. So what are you hearing as dealing with finances that maybe it will come down the pike or will not?
So unfortunately, when you're dealing with politics, it's basically who has power. And that's honestly the conversation, because there's a lot of bills. There's been the Eagle bill that's going on where they're recommending, I was saying about that earlier, $5,000 in exchange for Social Security, delaying your Social Security. You have the $2,000, and they're trying to mirror what's going on in Canada, because Canada is already doing that. So why is the free world not able to do that? You have the new 1200. It's very hard because it's dealing with politics, and also remember, we're also dealing with an election. Like, so there's so many political back and forth, and there's some conversation that in politics, and I'm not one of those people who go Republican, Democrat. That's not my portion, because I'm a financial educator, so I look at what's going on and try to give the best financial information. But there's so many people that's using COVID-19 as a political instrument, as opposed to really helping people. So it's my position is, if and when they do it, what are we going to do with that money? And it's very hard, because right now cash flow, which is I teach about the 6 steps of financial independence, and cash flow is one of them. People are having a hard time with cash flow, and that goes back to our initial conversation. When you have one source of income, guess what? You're liable. You're dependent on that one source of income. So we have to teach on multi-income. You hear a lot of people, especially in social media, talk about the importance of multi streams of income, but now we're realizing it's important, because you can't just depend on one source, because your cash flow can easily get removed, especially when now you have two breadwinners, the husband and wife, because now we're having dual incomes. Both of them are now unemployed. How does a family survive? And how can you really survive off of 1200, 2400? You can't use the government as the only answer. That's just a small band-aid in a bloodshot wound. So you have to fix not just the cash flow, but the mindset of understanding money, how money works, have to change, getting that financial education. Because if not, this is just going to keep going. We've seen the financial industry, and honestly, we've kind of been prepared, because every 10 years something happens.
Wow.
Take
Yeah.
that. Every 10 years, and we call it market correction. The market corrects itself. Now, it happened to be COVID-19. It could have been the real estate. It could have been the education, because there's an student loan bubble that's going to pop. Something was bound to happen every 10 years, because the market has to correct itself. The question is, are we prepared and planned? Because right now, we may be in COVID-19 now with the market correcting now. I'm already thinking, how am I going to prepare for 10 years down the road when something like this is going to happen again? Am I going to be in the same position with the same knowledge, or I'm going to be able to jump the game and know how to protect my assets, so that way I can actually realize retirement, realize financial independence, and not be like a lot of the millennials that feel that they're never going to retire because they just got finished with 2000, 2008, and now this. They don't have no money. Everybody starting from scratch. So if everybody's starting from scratch, it's like, all right, we have to change that mindset, and we have to go out and understand how the wealthy are becoming wealthier and we're staying poor. Yes, there are some, and I do feel that there's some things that legislature can do, but it's up to us to change our community.
It's important that we really talk about that bubble. But at this point right now, again, for those, because I still haven't gotten my first stimulus, and I began to worry about my second stimulus. But at this point, when you really talk about the education bubble, and we're very proud to have Professor John Smith on the line with us. And John, one of the things that I know that's incredible about what's happening in the community college is that they're offering free tuition in a number of different ways. Can you share a little bit with that information?
Well, at Essex, if you are a county resident and want to enhance your ability to be employed, enhance your skills, and you make under $65,000 a year, there's free tuition, free education waiting for you at Essex County College. I think that went into effect about a month ago. Uh, you can register for Summer One classes that starts May 26th. I think May 26th to around the 1st of July, or you can register for classes that start July 13th to around the middle of August. And it's a way of enhancing and a way that the college is trying to help those persons, especially the essential employees right now, to enhance their skill and to make themselves more marketable. But you just said you referred to Essex County College, Essex County Community College. It used to be called that, and it seems that in certain communities they took the community out of certain county colleges, and now Essex County Community College is just referred to as Essex County College. It's like they don't want people to understand that this is a community-based college, which it should be. So the community has been taken out, and we're just now Essex County College instead of Essex County Community College.
Well, we're really proud of it. I mean, you guys, blood, sweat, and tears, and it's
Yeah.
not just a cliche to where it has really amassed itself. Dr. Yamba, Zachary Yamba, and many of you, if you will, yourself included, have been very instrumental in giving many of the opportunities. I mean, COVID has really opened up another relationship to outreach. Hopefully we can be a part of helping to support that in regard to the fact that they are offering tuition free to essential workers who have applied for financial aid and who are eligible to get it living in the Essex County area. But also, you fail to talk about the fact that anyone 60 years or older have free tuition as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I took advantage of that one.
Yes. Yeah. Something for those persons. We don't call them, seniors or older persons. They're just persons with more experience.
Yes. And it's certainly been delightful for me. I took so long to try to overcome the obstacle of getting past the first degree. And the opportunity is here for me now. And then COVID comes.
Yeah.
But, one of the things, that was interesting, and maybe one of you can really tap in on this, is that obviously, that I was always on the front line fighting for freedom of education, and in many ways, not just charter schools, but education freedom. And homeschooling was one of the areas that I put a lot of emphasis in as well. It apparently seems like because of COVID, that the new trend of education is going to begin to become apparent, that homeschooling can be a normal method of educating. Any thoughts about that?
Well, as someone who works with the school and work in pre-K, I can definitely say that the test model has been tested. Now that may be deep for some, but for those who get it, the test model have been tested. So when you go to buy a car, you'll kick the tire, you'll lift up the hood, check the engine, to make sure it's a good running car. You get a chance to test it. But with this, they just, bam, this is what we're doing. And it's been very challenging for some. Some parents have gotten it, enjoy it maybe. But the key is that with school as we knew it, it won't be like school as we know it. You see what I'm saying? So there are going to be a lot of changes, and some of them may be where if this test model works out good, here's another financial piece. Like Young Buck said, it's going to save a lot of money in some areas if you can teach from home.
Mm.
But now you don't need the building. You don't have to pay for maintenance. Some of the teachers, you may not need as many. If you can Zoom, and they're doing this now as we speak, if you could Zoom your whole class from your living room and teach, that's, so yeah, we may be seeing school as we knew it, kind of slimming down, and homeschooling has definitely took a precedence in education since this COVID-19.
Wow. Listen, we got 2 minutes left. Greg, I know you're going to be doing something tomorrow. Why don't you give us a little heads up on what's happening?
No problem. So this Saturday, we're having a tax and retirement strategy seminars. We're teaching people how to plan for retirement, especially during this volatile market. So it's very crucial, especially with all the different strategies that's out there and all the bills such as the Secure Act and the CARES Act, and especially right now, one of the big things is that because of the CARES Act, you're able to withdraw up to $100,000 from your retirement without the 10% penalty. And if you don't understand what the 10% penalty is that I'm talking about, that's the reason why you definitely need to be on the seminar.
Right, you
Because
get to it at what time?
you get it at 11:30. It's retirementplanningwebinar.eventbrite.com to register. Just real quick, next Saturday, we're having an elder law and Medicaid planning workshop. A
And you're
lot of
going to
people
list all this on what? Herb Glenn's website, ain't you?
I will lift it all on Herb Glenn's website.
That's
Um,
herbglenn.com.
herbglenn.com. You'll be able to find all that information. Or you can also go on, so my social media platform is Ask Greg Strategy. So you can find it anywhere, but you can go to herbglenn.com.
And Ask Greg Strategies.
Ask Greg Strategy. That is
With
my
a
brand
Y, not an
with a
IES.
Y.
With a
Yeah,
Y.
because somebody already has that, but they
Is
don't
that
have
a
it with a Y.
.com or anything?
Ooh, next project.
I just type in Ask Greg Strategies and it's going to pop up.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I use a lot of webtalk.co/AskGregStrategy. Also on Facebook, I have Ask Greg Strategy, which is my personal Facebook page, and on my Instagram and Twitter is Ask Greg Strategy. So
Listen, all this technology. I remember teaching you how to use Microsoft Word.
yes,
Listen, we want to thank Marianne Wiktorowicz for being a part of our conversation. You're welcome back. Every Friday, we're going to be on at 11 o'clock so that we can have a conversation. Thank you very much for our mainstay, John L. Smith and Mr. Thomas Ellis, and my firstborn son, Gregory Glenn. We hope to hear from you again next week at 11 o'clock. We'll be back with the Image Profile Unplugged. Thank you very much. Listen, everybody, stay on for one moment while I separate us from all these other entities.